So once you've gone through review 2, you're able to really plan into your training plan, like your weekly meetings. You're really focusing on those targets. So really, by the time you get round to the final review 3 and the final moderation, you will have covered those targets, because they are your main focus between review 2 and review 3. And we talked about those targets sort of again and again, didn't we, in between the two
And sometimes
reviews.
they popped up a few times, didn't they, more than once, and it was just to make sure that it was consolidating, it was there all the time. I think as well from review 2, because you're planning for the last sort of stint in your teaching placement, you might go over things that were in placement 1 or placement 2. You just want to go over them again to see more evidence of, and then your file evidence will obviously look better.
I'd say the strongest evidence, all in all, is lesson observation feedback from your weekly lesson observation, because it shows your SBT or another professional saying that you have met that standard in this way. So a really good way to compile your portfolio is to make a pack of evidence, which would be, if it was from an observed lesson, your plan, the feedback, your evaluation, maybe some examples of the children's work, that all comes together. You can write a short paragraph to label it within your portfolio, and I think that's a really strong piece of evidence.
I think as well, if you're going to add the children's work, which is a really good idea, you might also want to think about annotating their work to see
Definitely.
how the progress has been recorded throughout the lesson, and even the next lesson after that, how it's continued and the sequence of lessons. And with Joe's observations, it was really helpful for him to cross-reference, because I would put what I've seen in Joe's lesson and the standard that it's sort of linked into, so then he could just cross-reference and put that within his file, and it was really easy to see what standard it was.
Yeah, so throughout the commentary on the lesson,
Yeah, throughout
sort of
the commentary.
thing, each sentence you'd label with the substandard that it was
Yeah.
meeting, which I found really useful to help me compile my evidence portfolio in the end. In terms of evidence collection, make sure that that's a continuous process and you're doing it from now, and you keep doing it rather than leaving it all to, say, 1 week before the review 3 or 2 weeks before the review 3. I know it's tempting to see that the start of June half term as a time that you can do all of your evidence collection, which is what I did, and it still wasn't enough time. Make sure that you've started that now and you've got it in your mind that that evidence file needs to be filling up continuously.
Yeah, I think using the time that you got out of class wisely as well. So, if you do have PPA time, make sure that it's for planning purposes or updating your file evidence folder. And as Joe said, just making sure that you're just adding continually to your evidence and cross-referencing, and after a lesson making sure that you're photocopying the work that's needed to provide the evidence that's standard.
Definitely.
Always make sure that there's that backup there.
Yeah,
for your
that's a really good
standards.
point. Make copies as you go rather than coming to it and trying to find things from 3 or 4 weeks ago,
And doing
making
it in
copies
bulk.
of that. Yeah. Okay, so we booked in time out of class to do the third review 2 weeks before my QAT came in for his final visit. We did that just like we'd done with the first and the second reviews, just so that the TPDR could be filled in, the paperwork complete, ready for the visit of the QAT, and that gives you then time to focus on preparing for the observation that your QAT will do without having to worry about filling in the TPDR if it's already done. After the final QAT visit, we then booked in the final moderation for 2 weeks after that, which gave me time to just sort of fine-tune my evidence portfolio based on my QAT's advice.
And I think we planned to do the review point 3 in advance of all those meetings. So Joe and I could really just be in agreement of his areas of strength and development. So we were talking from the same page when Joe's QAT came in. And then we had that time between Steve's visit and the final moderation to iron out anything that came from that initial meeting, didn't we?
Yeah.
And you could obviously evidence that in the subsequent lessons that you had to teach.
Well, I'm not gonna lie, it was a very stressful period, but looking back, it did sort of pass by in a blur, and it did pass by, and you just got to remember that it will be over, even if you feel like you're working harder than you've ever worked before. There is a light at the end of the tunnel. You'll get through it. Once you get past the final QAT visit, and you're preparing for final moderation, that visit is there to sort of be your coronation, if you like. It's more of a celebration of what you've done rather than something to panic about. Just if you want to reduce stress in the sort of final month and a half of the course, just make sure you're on top of the paperwork now, which is probably my main piece of advice, because I wasn't at this stage, and that did end up causing me more stress in the final month.
I think as well, although you said that you felt stressed at that point, you were very organised with everything else in class, so you probably had time to do that later on, I suppose, because you were very organised with the way you managed your time with your PPA and your marking and your planning. Prioritising things is a big thing as well, just making sure that obviously marking's got to be done in the planning for the next day. But the way Joe has said that he did his file at home and organised it then and cross-referenced it then, so that's probably a better idea, I think.
I would also say don't work all the time. Give yourself an evening off, even if it has to be Friday. Give yourself a day off at the weekend. Don't work through Saturday, Sunday, because then that will just make you more tired and stressed. Make sure you do take some time out for yourself.
Definitely.
Oh, just utter relief that it was over, and I was still in class and I was still teaching some, wasn't I? But
Yeah.
I was able to cut my teaching timetable down. I was able to relax, and then that's when you can really start looking forward to the following year. So if you're applying for jobs, you can really focus on that. If you've already got a job, you can focus on what you're going to be sort of setting things up for the following year.